It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to this One Ocean Hub webinar on ocean education and sustainability. My name is Francesco Sindico, and I am a co-investigator on the One Ocean Hub. The Hub is a research for development, multi-partner 5-year project funded by UKRI, aimed at improving ocean governance for the benefit of vulnerable communities whose livelihoods depends on healthy ocean ecosystems. I will post more information about the Hub in the chat, and you can have a look for yourself. The Hub has a school and youth component, and this is today's webinar. This is where today's webinar really fits in. The school component of the Hub builds on a school program that the Strathclyde Centre for Environmental Law and Governance has developed over the past 3 years called Island Explorers. And again, in the chat, I will share some information about Island Explorers. Now, before I let you know what the 2 main objectives of today's webinar are, let me run you through some housekeeping. Let me encourage all participants and speakers to use the chat. And we will use the chat to introduce ourselves and to comment on any aspect of the webinar that are close to your practice or even just to your heart. And feel free to share links or any other information. But please do not use the chat to ask questions. If you want to ask questions, use the Q&A box that appears on the bottom of your Zoom screen. Now, when you ask a question, you can please, if it is a question for a specific speaker, tell us who that specific speaker is. Some questions will also be shared to the speakers by the moderators in the Q&A session. Some will be answered by the speakers themselves in the Q&A box. It may be that we cannot go through all of them, but it would be great to collate as many as we can. Now, the webinar has 2 goals. In the first part, we will take an exciting journey around the world to see how teachers and schools inspire their pupils about the oceans that surround us. In the second part of the webinar, we will explore how the passion that pupils get in the school, in the classroom, can lead to advocacy and to strong action in support of ocean governance. And we will also discuss, we live in the world that we live in, we will also discuss briefly the impacts of COVID-19 on schools and on ocean education. But before that, I would like to give the floor to my colleague within the One Ocean Hub, Robin Adams, who will briefly introduce a school and education project that she is leading within the Hub. Robin, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Adams from South Africa. And a new project that we're starting is called Mzansea, Revealing South Africa's Underwater Ecosystems. This is an ocean literacy project funded through the One Ocean Hub and co-designed by educators, marine scientists, and storytellers. We started this project because one of the Hub's key research areas is to understand and explore deep sea ecosystems. These ecosystems, like our deep water coral grounds and lace coral gardens, are vibrant and diverse, but are inaccessible and therefore not well understood. We wanted to emotionally connect South Africans to these ecosystems using storytelling and illustration. The motivation of Mzansea is threefold. Firstly, as a coastal country, South Africans have deep spiritual and emotional connections to the ocean, but mostly to the coast. We wanted to foster a deeper connection between people and these amazing deep South African ecosystems. Secondly, despite South Africa having 11 official languages, the educational resources, and particularly environmental education resources, are limited to 2 languages. This poses a barrier to learning, and we wanted to promote more equitable learning through translation into more languages. Thirdly, we wanted to inspire a deeper understanding of the ocean and foster ocean literacy, in the hope that it will equip young people to participate in decision-making in the future. Our project outputs would have 3 audiences at 3 levels. At the primary school level, we wanted to include an illustrated children's book and online learning resources. Again, at the second tier would be at the high school level and for decision makers. all of which were made freely available in multiple languages to promote equitable learning and a more ocean-literate South Africa. Thank you. Back to you, Francesco.
Thank you very much, Robin. And picking up from the last slide, this webinar and also what we do in the Hub is really a journey through different parts of education from primary school to secondary school, bringing it to decision makers. But I now give the floor to my colleague and friend within the One Ocean Hub, Joe Pitt, who will be moderating the first part of this webinar. Joe, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks Francesco, and hi everybody, and welcome again to this webinar. It's great to see so many of you here. As Francesco says, my name is Joe. I'm the Programme Manager of the UKRI GCRF One Ocean Hub, and within that I work alongside Francesco to lead the schools component of the Hub, as well as our sister project Island Explorers, which is based here in Scotland with partners around the world. So the schools component of the Hub and Island Explorers has really been something that's grown over the last couple of years, and it's grown from, as Robin said, this need to connect young children with the ocean, and that the importance of doing that and safeguarding our ocean health in the future by engaging them in potentially in future decision making. But exploring how to engage children in the ocean is really interesting, and it's something that we've found fascinating through Island Explorers, is really developing how this is done in different educational settings, using different educational practices. And that's really the focus of this part of the session today, is to look at how we bring ocean literacy into the classroom in different educational contexts from different geographies around the world. And to help us do that, I'm delighted to introduce three amazing speakers who we've had the privilege of working with through both our programs. So we have Robin Vieira from Puna House School in Honolulu, Hawaii, Labrini Grigori from Gymnasium of Astapelia in Greece, and Caroline Beaton from Jordan Hill Primary School here in Glasgow. So without further ado, I'll pass over to our first speaker, which is Robin Vieira from Puna House School in Hawaii. Robin, over to you. The floor is yours, Robin.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you. So I'm Robin Vieira. I'm the Director of Global Education at Puna House School in Honolulu, Hawaii. So you can see us here on the map. We are not the largest island, but we are the most populated island, where the capital is. And this is a picture of our school. We are the largest independent school in the United States. And I put this picture here because I think it exemplifies the mission of the school. It's this connection between place and education, and the merging of the indoor classroom and the outdoor classroom. And this is our new elementary building. And here you have taro growing, you have native species all over. And I think it pertains to ocean health in the sense that it's taking care of your place, it's the aina, and it's what you're responsible for. So, okay. In Hawaii, this is important to ocean health. We divide our land systems into ahupua'as. And here's the island of Oahu. And you can see these long lines that go from mountain to ocean. And it's the recognition that the oceans and the mountains and everything between are all connected. And we're from the ahupua'a of Manoa Valley, from the Manoa Mountains down to Waikiki Beach, okay? And here you can see it. Everything's connected. Whatever flows down the oceans, flows down the rivers, ends up in the oceans. And that's part of this understanding of ocean health, that it's not just protecting your oceans, but it's really protecting that entire ahupua'a system and making sure that nothing goes into it that you wouldn't want to flow out to the oceans. So moving on to that sort of idea of systems, that to us is part of the most important thing when we think about ocean health, and it's understanding that we are all connected. And this is an activity that we did with our first graders. It's a systems thinking activity, looking at some issues that students cared about and how they're connected to one another and some of the effects of these issues. Okay, and then we move towards, this goes on the connection where kids were drawing connections between what goes in these sort of like reservoirs, the connection between pollution, and how all of this is part of a larger system that affects our oceans. So then we move on to action, which is an important component of our curriculum. This is a picture of a first grade project where we partnered with some first graders in Japan. And we shared about our oceans, what makes it beautiful, what makes it special, the value of place. But then we also shared about things that worry us about our oceans. And we actually collected things and we sent it to one another. And so here's you can see some of the plastic pollution that we received from our friends in Japan. And this is important because Japan and Hawaii are connected by the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And this brought awareness to our students that it's not just about our island, it's about how we're connected in supporting our oceans. Here's another picture of our students moving towards action. Here they're at a nearby bay where we have invasive algae that is taking over all the native algae. And this is because pollution flowing into the streams creates a breeding ground for this algae. And then it suffocates out our native algae and seaweed. So here the students are, they're collecting it. That is a Japanese partner as well from another school. They were visiting our school, and we believe that when we share our islands with visitors, it's also about sharing some of the problems and taking action for them. So here's some of our older students. Here on the left, we see students, they were collecting plastic pollution, graphing it. This is a math class. And then here on the right, we have a student in our design lab who is creating these oyster cages that will help clean the bay and protect these oysters that can help support the renewal of the native seaweed. So again, this idea of moving from understanding towards action and having students included on this journey. And that is it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Robin. That was so interesting to see all of the different initiatives and how it's so linked to sort of traditions in Hawaii as well. It's just such a fascinating way of bringing it all together. So from Hawaii, we will move to the other side of the world, to Greece, and I'll pass over to Labrini Grigori from Gymnasium of Astapelia in Greece, a small island school we'll hear from next. Over to you, Labrini.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Labrini Grigori. I am the principal of Astapelia. Astapelia, the Gymnasium of Astapelia, is a small island in Greece. It is one of the Dodecanese islands. As you can see here, there is the map of Greece, and Astapelia is the dot inside the circle. And it looks like a butterfly. That is why it is called the butterfly of the Aegean. Here you can see a picture of Astapelia with the Venetian castle on the top of the hill, the windmills, and the central square. And here is the main entrance of our school. And here is the breathtaking view from our school and the schoolyard. And here are some inside photos of our school. As you can see, it is a rather artistic school. And here you can see a place where the celebrations are held and our E-class. So let's move on to our project. Our project is called Fish Forward. It is a pan-European project raising awareness of social and environmental impacts of fish consumption. 17 partners participate in this project from 17 different countries. Our school started this project by firstly notifying the parents about the project encouraging them to participate actively along with their kids. We came in contact with the organization of WWF here in Greece, and we designed the school project together. Our students started a small research concerning overfishing, the causes, effects, and solutions. They studied scientific articles, visited the WWF's official website, watched movies about overfishing, other various information. With the support of WWF, they made questionnaires addressing the local fishermen, both amateurs and professionals, and the owners of fish restaurants. Students came in contact with the scientific director of Archipelagos. This is an institute of marine conservation, because they realized the need to defend and protect the biodiversity of the Aegean through conservation actions and community engagement. They talked to marine ecologists of the Department of Marine Sciences of the University of Aegean, and they made an outline of their basic actions. Their most important goal was not to keep the project inside the school walls. They basically aimed at spreading the word by engaging the local community. Students talked to the local authorities about the problem of overfishing and suggested solutions about sustainable fishing. They came in contact with the island's mayor and presented the project. They started interviewing local fishermen and seafood restaurant owners. They proposed the latter ones recipes using low-demand fish. They handed out seafood guides and relevant material. They proposed a restaurant fish week. A poster is almost ready bearing the title Astypala, a fish-friendly island. They gave the chance to their classmates to calculate the carbon footprint of their favorite seafood through this particular game, Fish Forward's Finprint game. It was rather enjoyable, this particular game. And kids played in groups trying to score the low carbon footprint. As a conclusion, I could say that it is of great importance for our school children to learn how to cooperate with the local communities and authorities to develop innovative solutions and conservation projects aimed at protecting habitats and species of the Aegean Sea, to work directly in order to stop destructive human behavior such as illegal fishing practices, to launch environmental actions and awareness campaigns at local and national levels through the use of social media, video animation, and printed media in order to inform the public on how to better preserve and actively protect its natural resources, and to become ocean and sea and ocean literate. Because we are the oceans, we are the seas, we are SDGs, and we need to synchronize and harmonize ourselves with the seas and the oceans if we want to be free, safe, and secure. And here you can see some pictures of the kids visiting the fishermen, talking to them, and having conversation with them, and also the fish restaurant owners. And here is our poster, but it is not ready yet. But we wanted you to see it. And it was inspired by the logo of the European Fisheries Control Agency, as you can see here, and also by a clay hanging oil lamp in the form of a fish, which we found in the Byzantine Museum. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Labrini. That was amazing, and what a fantastic project. And I think somebody actually commented in the chat that it definitely should get an award for the best name, Fish Forward. Absolutely fantastic name for such a project. I look forward to hearing a little bit more about it. I know I've got lots of questions myself on it, but before we go to Q&A, and if anybody in the audience has any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A function. But now we'll go from Greece back to Glasgow, back to here in Scotland, and I'm absolutely delighted to share one of our Island Explorer partner schools, Jordan Hill Primary, and I'll pass over now to Caroline Beaton.
Great, thank you so much, Jo. So I'm Caroline Beaton, and I'm here to show you that you don't need to be right beside a beach to teach ocean literacy and to have children who are really passionate about protecting the ocean from their local environment. So I work at Jordan Hill School, which is a through school primary and secondary in Glasgow, about 30 minutes from the west coast of Scotland if you take the most direct route. We have over 1,000 pupils in our school, and I've run the Island Explorer project with primary 4 pupils for the past 2 academic years, and so that's children who are aged 8 and 9 years old. And it was a friend who joined our school, who had run the project at her previous school, that really inspired me. And I think she's on this call tonight as well, so that's my inspiration for launching the project. We are Rights Respecting Gold School Award holder, and I just really felt we could take our kind of journey in learning for sustainability further and diversify into exploring sustainable development goals, looking at life below the ocean, and also using it to develop and enhance our health and wellbeing programs, and particularly, I'll share with you tonight, our literacy programs with our pupils. So we undertook the Island Explorer Hawaii programme, and as we don't unfortunately have a beach on our doorstep in Glasgow, we were really fortunate that Strathclyde could provide us with resources that you can see here, such as a sand tray which had samples of plastic from around the world. And it was a really powerful way actually to sit with children in an urban environment and see them map out with shock actually at how far some plastic can travel in our oceans. And it was really, really brilliant to have actual video clips from children in Robin's school in Hawaii at Punahu School to really launch the project. And that had a real strong impact on our pupils, who, you know, actually heard from children who were equally as passionate as them from around the world. We then launched into our programme, and as you'll see, it grew arms and legs in various directions, which is brilliant. From the literacy side of things, we taught Sankanes earlier in the year, and when we were discussing with the children what's a powerful way to put a message across, Sankane poetry came up, and it was really good to share that with our parents at our end of year assembly as well. We had 3 or 4 children sharing their powerful message through poetry. Children this year, when we ran the project, we took it a step further, and you'll see there's an example of a story on the screen here. The children chose an ocean creature, and they told their story through their writing lessons, but they actually really had to think about a positive ending. You know, we'd had all the doom and gloom of ocean plastic is a huge issue. You know, David Attenborough obviously had his lots of media last year over it as well. So our children kind of were left a lot of the time feeling, what can we actually do? So this was a really powerful way for them to use their imaginations and step into the role of a character. But it was amazing to see how attainment was risen through the project being so real for them. They had a real purpose for their writing. They had a message to share. They had a genuine audience as well for it. And that meant that children who maybe are more hesitant writers were really forthcoming with their ideas, which was fantastic as a teacher to see. We do have beaches around Scotland, obviously. So during spring break, just after the launch of the project, the children had done the sand tray element, but still had to move into the design side of the project, which I'll come to. So some of our children took action. You'll see on the left hand of the screen here, this is on Dornoch Beach, which is in the northeast of Scotland. And one of our pupils regularly goes up to visit, but was delighted on this visit to discover that he could do his own litter pick. And I understand a significant amount of his holiday was then spent taking action in order to ensure that some of our litter on our beaches did not end up in Hawaii, for example. We also had other people here who again was outraged to find plastic that had clearly been washed up and was worn away and had clearly spent a significant amount of time on the ocean. But the positive from that was that we found that about 70% of the photos and the images when the children brought them back into school after Easter break were positive, that Scotland does have clean beaches, but then the children felt even more passionate that they had to keep it that way, and it wasn't enough just to sign them off as clean, and that nothing would make it into the oceans. So we then came back into school after spring break, and we were really fortunate to have input from one of our parents, who is a local teacher at a secondary school, but was an ocean scientist in a previous life. And she was delighted to come in, and we ran some filtration lessons looking at microplastics, and that was a brilliant way to illustrate to our pupils how small this plastic is. They'd heard it on the TV, they'd seen it on the news and on our local BBC News round. Quite often it was being discussed, but for them to physically see how tiny microplastic is was a really strong way to bring it to life when they cannot go regularly to the beach and have a look at what's going on. We then culminated our project with the children working in groups to design a device that could be used in Hawaii, in Greece, anywhere in the world, to either clean up a beach or the ocean itself. And so we then had visitors. We had Francesco Sindico from Strathclyde brought his team along to judge Dragon's Den style pitches, where the children weren't just presenting their design, they'd thought about what would they do with the plastic after it had been taken out of the ocean, because as we know, plastic is not just going to disappear. You can't just throw it in the bin or a landfill or burn it, heaven forbid. So they were looking at really innovative ways that they could improve the use of plastic that we are stuck with just now, before we start to look at reducing its use in the first place. So there just shows you some of our pupils who were then invited to go to Strathclyde, which was a really exciting day for the children to be able to present to the experts who are working on the front line to reduce plastic pollution in our oceans. We were fortunate that in last year's class, one of the leaders of one of the major UK parties was the aunt of one of our pupils, and so we pulled a few strings, and as a result of completing a Diamond 9, the children decided, actually, being in an urban school, they could take action and reduce plastic that was on our playground, because we discussed how it goes into the drains that then feed into the River Clyde, which runs through Glasgow and out then into the seas and oceans. But they decided, as well as looking at local action just on our playground and reducing the litter that we drop, that they would like to write to Parliament, write to an MP, and we were really lucky that she wrote back, which was fantastic. So 33 letters came back to the school, all individually addressed to our children. And the main thing that she highlighted was the fact that the UK plastics bill is in existence. And so we had discussion this current year about the fact that all plastic is going to need to be recycled, but actually a lot of urban plastic does still end up in our oceans. So it made the children really passionate about taking action, but also made them feel like, although they're not right beside a beach, that they had a significant impact on reducing plastic use. So this is us now a year on from the first cohort that I ran the project with, and I got in touch with some of our pupils from that cohort, and it's really interesting just to see their perspective, and you can see their key messages are up for you just now. But I think the main things I take away as a class teacher from it is that ocean education is essential. The children are now expecting it, and they expect that continuity as well. They were aware that the project runs in primary 4, but then that there's other varieties of the project linking up with other islands all over the world, and they were really excited to be part of that. And I hope, despite COVID, that next year that can still take place, even virtually as well. I think also as well the communication, the fact that the whole project started with children in Hawaii, in Punahu, talking about the issue of ocean plastic that they see day to day because they live near the beach, was really strong as well, and we're really keen to take that forward in future years. And I think just the main kind of message on the impact to protect the planet as well. So I think for anyone who's listening tonight who's in an urban school, you can absolutely work with these projects and bring them to life in your own special way. So thank you.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Caroline. I just love hearing the stories of how your pupils took island explorers and made it even greater, and probably without realizing themselves the connection between them understanding how the urban environment is connected to the ocean, even though it is far away, and the similarities between that and what Robin was saying at the start about how that's sort of ingrained in the culture in Hawaii. I guess it's coming at it from different perspectives, but that, you know, it's just so lovely to see that connection there. So thanks so much. That concludes the sort of formal presentations of this part of the session, but we'll move now to some Q&A, and if anybody in the audience has any questions for any of the panelists, feel free just to put them in the Q&A. But I think I'll open with a really great question that's come in from one of our deep sea researchers in the audience, and I think it's a really important question. So I'd like to ask it to all of the panelists. So perhaps we can start with Robin in Hawaii, and Kerry Sink, our researcher in South Africa, would like to ask, what do you think the key elements are for inspiring children across the different ocean projects that you were presenting on?
Yeah, for us, we go through a design cycle that starts with the idea of empathy, and empathy can be a lot of things. It can be researching, it can be talking to an expert, it can be going out into the ocean. We use a lot of the Project Zero visual thinking routines where students see, they think, and then they wonder. And I think it's this idea of really developing questions that come from the students. And then once they have those questions and you say, okay, well, what are you going to do about them? They're inspired then to do the research, further on their understanding, and dig into some action. So I would say that you provide that space for exploration and inquiry that can then fuel some of those questions.
That is so interesting, and so linked to what Robin Adams is trying to do in the Mzansea project, to sort of build that empathy with the ocean. Labrini, from your perspective, from a small island school, what are the sort of key elements that inspired the children in, for example, the Fish Forward project?
I think it is very important for kids here because who live on the island, because we are islanders, that is to say, and we are in everyday contact with the sea. So the kids are in contact with the fishermen. Most of the families have a fisherman at least. So they really love the sea and they want to protect it. It is something, it's a characteristic of us. So it was not very difficult to do a project like that. It was quite logical to do a project like that. And we start at a local level, and we want to move forward, like fish forward. We want to do more things in the future. This was just the beginning. And they were really inspired by their everyday life and their contact with nature and the sea.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Labrini. And Caroline, it'd be really interesting to hear from you what the elements are in inspiring children in the urban context. And did you find that, I mean, Glasgow's not too far from the ocean, but I guess it's, you know, it's not you wouldn't pop down there every day necessarily. Do you find that there's some children who, if they maybe visit the ocean more, were they sort of more motivated or inspired, or was there any sort of difference that you found in the sort of urban setting?
Yeah, no, definitely. We have a lot of children who regularly do go out to visit. Could be, as I say, it is only half an hour away, but just the way it fell within the school year, we kind of looked at doing a whole class trip out. But I think as well, we then had discussion with my pupils about impact, and I think that was a huge part of our project, saying, well, we might not physically be there picking it up, but could we do something that could still have a significant impact? I think that's what kind of formed the whole basis of the project. Was, you know, there was so many discussions, especially in that first year that we did it, when, you know, there'd be no rumours about what the project was about and what it involved on the playground. It was amazing to see, you know, so many of our people started off very hesitant, you know, oh, we couldn't do that, oh no, we can't write to Parliament, and we can't share a message using poetry that people would actually change their attitude about plastic use. And so it was just really exciting as a class teacher to work with 8 and 9-year-olds and say, actually, no, you can actually, and you have a voice. And I think that's where the likes of kind of Greta Thunberg in the last year or so have really inspired pupils. And I've got pupils in my class who have been reading her books because she is a young activist as well, and she's had such a huge impact. So I think, you know, it definitely, the project brought it to life in the classroom, and it showed them that they could take action by physically going to the beach. But I think also it makes them now really appreciate it when they do go, that they have this whole background to life on the sea from friends around the world as well.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to see that sort of journey that they went on. I know I always think back to some of the classrooms that we took Island Explorers to in other Glasgow schools. There was definitely that sort of gradual build up, and then when it came to the designing their own solutions, it sort of empowered them to get really excited, and I think having that connection with pupils somewhere else in the world, and sort of seeing it from, you know, that it wasn't just some, you know, a problem that was for the turtles, but actually it was people, and the people their own age. But I think the writing to the members of Parliament is such a great outcome for the project, and I know that the MP wrote back, which was amazing, and then there was a change, which the pupils can say they contributed something towards. Labrini, I was fascinated as well with the Fish Forward project. You mentioned there was various sort of activities, and the pupils, I think you mentioned they went to the mayor and they visited the restaurants and obviously their own parents and things. What was I was just curious, but what was the reaction from those stakeholders when they were presented by the work of the pupils? Were they receptive of it, and did they make any changes, or lasting changes as a result?
Yes, they were quite receptive, I could say. Of course, it is just the beginning, so we need to see in the future what happens. But our basic aim was for kids to become active citizens, no matter what the result is going to be. Okay, we need to have a positive result. It would be very nice, but this was the main idea, to engage themselves in different actions, and also try to engage the local community. And since we live on an island, the people's reactions were very positive. But as far as decision makers, now we need to see what happens in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody's actually asked a question about that, about how we build in evaluation into these sorts of projects, and track how the impact of them. And I wonder with Fish Forward, is there any plans to sort of follow up with the mayor in the future, or is that something that's still in development?
It is still in development because our project is still incomplete due to the pandemic. So we didn't have the time to complete it. But next year, we're going to do more things, and maybe take it from a local level to a more national one. And yes, maybe something else will happen in the future.
No, that's great, and it would be fascinating to see what happens in the future. Absolutely. And Caroline, another question that's here, which is really important, and I'd be interested again to get views from everybody else with these, the sort of greater emphasis on ocean literacy at the moment. And I think, you know, we can all agree that it's something that is much needed to engage pupils in the ocean, and hopefully inspire them to continue to get involved in decision making, you know, and take it forward no matter where their lives lead them. But how we do that in the classroom is really important, and you know, the projects that we've discussed here give some really great examples of that. But to what extent are these projects like Island Explorers or Fish Forward, or the active projects in Hawaii, are they embedded in the curriculum, and how do we work those projects into existing curricula structures? Are they still seen, because they don't kind of fit in any disciplinary box, you know, maths or science or art necessarily, they're sort of all encompassing, and I just wondered, how have you experienced any challenges in doing that, or how you see them fitting? And maybe we could start with Caroline.
Yep, great, thank you. So in the first year, was very much kind of in the final term that I was had done the training and was introduced to it. But I think I was instantly sold on how engaged the pupils were. And I think if you could ask any pupil that I taught last year, you know, what was the big project we did last year, that would be it. And I think we're really fortunate in Scotland that there is huge teacher autonomy in how we plan our experiences and outcomes for our young people as well. And it means then, you know, that we can take a science outcome and actually you could do some great writing as a result of a science experiment. And, you know, we brought so much poetry out of it as well that kind of just came up incidentally and we were able to run with it. So I think we don't have the pressures of the start of a term in Scotland, plan exactly every single lesson that you're going to cover and just stick to that. And I think as well, just the power of the children's enthusiasm for it, you could see the direction that you needed to go in because they were going to hold you to account if you didn't as well. So I think that's really important, is, you know, believing and embracing the fact that you could go in a completely different direction. But it was really great to try it last year and then run the programme this year. And we linked it into a topic that's been in existence for a number of years on extreme weather. And we there was lots of discussion about, well, if there's flooding in Glasgow, that floods into the river and that in turn floods out to the ocean, and what would happen if our streets were littered, as a lot of our streets are. So we had that loose link this year when we introduced the project, which I think was beneficial.
No, that's great. And it is wonderful having that sort of freedom here. But Robin, it sounded to me like in Hawaii, this idea of connectedness between the ocean and land is sort of ingrained in the culture. And I was fascinated, you mentioned the work at first grade, but I was wondering, as well as being part of the curricula, do the pupils there sort of come with a sense of that already, you know, just from being in Hawaii, or is that something that is taught in school?
I think it's something that's taught in school. I think we're really privileged at our school to have this beautiful campus. And I would say our first graders go on field trips maybe every other week. It's part of this idea that you're going out into your community, and they do a lot of just like forest exploring where they're building little structures out of pine needles. So from a very early childhood, in our early childhood, they're doing a lot of just exploration in nature. They spend a ton of time looking very closely at things. And so they'll go out and they'll sit down for a long time and paint and sketch something, maybe a flower or a leaf. And it's this idea of really deep observation. And then they come back, and as I explained before, a lot of those sort of inquiry questions that emerge from those learning trips. And I'll also say that a lot of the parents come, and it's very explicit. They may not just chitty chat. They have to sit down next to their child and do that deep observation work as well. And it's really part of our parent training, that parents need to learn to be present in their environment as well. And so it's taught at our school.
Amazing, and amazing bringing the parents into it as well. Yeah, it's just, I guess it's just part of that sort of culture. I guess something that we can sort of aspire to elsewhere in the world, where it's still sort of more of a sort of add-on sometimes, but we can hopefully get somewhere more like that. Labrini, what the Fish Forward project, how did that fit within the curricula? Maybe you could give us a little bit of context. I know your school's it's a very small school, and they just, you know, how many pupils you have and how that project fitted in with the curricula there.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the curriculum is quite strict in Greece, and we have very strict deadlines. And our educational system is rather an exam-centered system and teacher-centered than student-centered. And I think that at some point this must change. It is a suggestion made by teachers that this cannot go on for a long period of time. So I think that it was quite difficult to fit the program, the project, inside the curriculum. I think that the best solution in the future is for for sea education or ocean education to be a distinct subject in the curriculum. This would be great, according to my opinion, as far as our educational system is concerned. Because if it is a distinct lesson, then you can do more things. You're going to have more time to do things. And if I go back to my school years, I would like sustainable living in general to be a distinct lesson, like some other things that I have in mind, like personal finance or relationship values or human rights, applied math, sociology or anthropology. These are important things that should be taught inside the school. So this is our suggestion. We try to do our best with the educational system we have, and I think that teachers here in Greece are doing what they can with the tools they have and the time they are given to do that.
That's so interesting, Labrini, and you know, just to sort of compare with the other schools, you know, in this sort of extent to which schools and classrooms are sort of free to move within the bounds of their existing curriculum, and how the existing curriculums in so many parts of the world are, but probably the majority are sort of rigid and defined by discipline. But when we're thinking about sustainability, how we need to look at it sort of much more holistically, and that's one of the goals of the hub, is actually to break apart those boundaries and look at how we can do start with research and do it more multidisciplinary, and you know, start to look at how we make decisions in a more holistic way. And I guess that also comes back to what tools and methods we use in the classroom when we are introducing these projects. So Robin talked at the start about this super exciting project in South Africa using storytelling as a way of bringing the deep sea into the classroom. And somebody was asking in the Q&A about the use of video and how pupils how do they respond to video. I know we used quite a lot of video in Island Explorers, not least to introduce our friends in Hawaii and to introduce our Scottish pupils to Hawaii. I wonder what different sort of methods do you use in the classroom, beyond going out and doing field work, which is the sort of everybody's dream, but it's not always practical, particularly in city schools. So maybe we could start with Robin, and maybe you could just share some of the tools and techniques. Have you ever used storytelling, for example, or use of video and so on?
Which Robin?
Oh, sorry, Robin, you.
Okay. There's two of us. Okay, so how do we, if you don't have the ability to go out and be there, how are you doing that sort of empathy inquiry stage? Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of times it's research, it's bringing an expert. We had for our oyster cages, that the design for that, we brought in someone from a nonprofit who came in and talked about some of the needs of their nonprofit. We've even just brought in other teachers, like maybe with our lower school kids, we have some of our high school teachers. Actually, we went to them, which was extremely exciting. And we got to go into their high school classroom, and they share with our students about some of the issues that they're seeing. So a lot of interview, but also, we do a lot of video as well. There's always virtual field trips that you can go on. There's a ton of them, especially right now, and that can serve that role. We Skype in with experts. That's always a possibility. So just getting creative with finding ways to connect the students to different people who can speak on the topic.
Oh, brilliant. And I guess more than ever now, the use of Skype and Zoom to bring in the experts. I guess maybe a few months ago that might have seemed quite alien in some classrooms, but perhaps it will become more common now as everybody around the world becomes more familiar with using technology. We could take quite a big leap in doing that. We're nearly out of time for this section, but just very briefly, I'd love to hear from Caroline about the different methods, because I know you used quite a few different kind of approaches in your classroom.
I was just frantically trying to find the YouTube. I'll send the YouTube link. It's called The Whale's Tale. I'm trying to remember who made it. And that was a really effective way to get children writing as well, using the stimulus of it's a whale, and I'll stick it in I'll copy the link into the chat in a minute. I don't want to set it off live. But that was really exciting way. We use a lot of media in my classroom anyway to inspire writing, so that part of the process was natural for the children. It wasn't new for them to see use a short film clip as inspiration for the writing, and I think that was probably the most powerful one. But your Island Explorer program has Nalu the turtle, and that was something that a lot of the pupils, when I spoke to them last week, still remember. It was Nalu, and we did an end of year assembly for our parents, and we had people dressed up as Nalu, and everyone was contending for his role because he had such an important message there as well. But I think just the kind of bringing in the poetry and the kind of musical sense of rhythm as well to it, and it was interesting Robin talking about going to the secondary department. We've done that as well for other projects, and I think we would look to do that more in the future as well, because it's amazing how inspired they are just by being in a different setting, even within the same school, to try out different experiments as well. But I definitely think using the power of the media as well. We used quite a lot of Blue Planet from David Attenborough as well in the classroom.
I'm just going to add, one more thing. Beyond having people come in, I think that idea of a launch is really, really important. That phase that gets kids curious, and someone else had asked about engagement, that it could really be something as simple as like putting out a bunch of stuff in front of students and having them explore those plastics and looking at them, where was it made, or looking at a picture, like where does this go? But I think it's very much a Reggio technique, but having that time devoted to early exploration is super important.
No, that's great. Thanks, Robin. We are slightly over time here, but I just really want to ask Labrini, because I was amazed by, in your slides, you had such beautiful artwork on the walls. And I was just wondering if you could share with us how you maybe used art in some of your projects, and how, to sort of bring it all together, and the pupils' role within that.
Yes, we are very fortunate because we have a great art teacher in our school, and the kids are engaged into doing art. And some of the paintings were made by the students with the help of their teacher. And they really like reading books, finding pictures that are really imaginative, and putting these pictures inside their school. That's why I said it is a rather artistic school, and we like doing that. Also, we, as the previous speaker said, we watch films. We like watching films concerning the sea and the ocean, and what else? Sorry, I'm stuck. I try to speak in English, but I'm not very good at it.
You're doing a stellar job, far better than my Greek.
It is all Greek. It is all Greek to you.
Not at all. No, that was great. Thank you, Labrini. And we are a few minutes over, so I will have to draw this part of the session to a close. Thank you so much to our teacher presenters. And I'll pass now over to Francesco, but we can keep the chat going, and of course we can follow up offline as well. Over to you, Francesco.
Thank you very much, Jo. And let me just share with you that I just enjoyed this first part so much. It was just an incredible trip around the world and such amazing practical experiences. I was lucky enough to be in one of these classrooms with Caroline and some other schools here in Glasgow, and the passion, the strength, the energy the kids have is just absolutely amazing. But there are a number of things that I now want to raise, and then I'll give the floor and introduce our fantastic two speakers. I think Labrini mentioned active citizens. This is a really important point. It's all well to inspire pupils and to teach them about great things like the ocean, but how do we make them active citizens? What does that even mean in a way? And then I think all the projects, all the examples you mentioned, we can bring them, and I know Wally is an expert in this, in project-based learning. I really think that's one of the key points of the kind of projects that we're talking. And then this evaluation, these indicators. A lot of people had questions about, it looks beautiful, but how do you measure it? And the first person who I will introduce is Olivia Livingston, which in a way is an indicator for herself. I'm sorry to put you like that, but the point is, Olivia, not too much time ago, was a pupil, was a school student, a pupil, and now she's a passionate leader of ocean awareness, education, and policy. Olivia comes from the UN World Ocean Week Youth Advisory Council, and I've known her and a few others of the council just for a few days, let's say, a few weeks, but the passion again that they have seems to come directly from that classroom environment that we were discussing in the previous session. So Olivia will tell us a bit about her experience and how we bring this passion from the classroom to the life after school. And we will then have Ollie Newton, Executive Director at Edge Foundation. And Ollie will talk to us about his own experience, about his foundation, but we'll also comment on what he has heard until now. I'm assuming he'll maybe mention project-based learning and so forth, but I would also push Ollie to take on the difficult question of schools in the context of COVID-19, because it is the context that we're living in, and in some countries more than others. So I will leave it to that. I will be happy to then get more questions from the chat. And the last Q&A, if there are some last questions also to the other speakers, you're more than welcome to pose them and we can bring them back in the Q&A. I'll give you the floor, Olivia, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Francesco. Good evening, everyone. I am Olivia Precious Livingston from Liberia. I'm a member of the Youth Advisory Council World Oceans Day. And at the council, what we try to do is to create World Oceans Day in a way in which it can unite young people around the globe and make them global ambassadors for celebrating World Oceans Day. So as Francesco said, I recently graduated from the Cottington University. And all through my primary, secondary, tertiary education, I did not get the chance to learn about ocean literacy. Let me say, my primary education. It was in university that I started studying environmental science, that I really got to know more about our beautiful ocean. So just imagine if I have had the opportunity that so many students now have around the world to learn about the ocean. Someone might be wondering then, how did you become so passionate about the ocean? The beach has always been my favorite place. Since when I was a child, I always asked my dad to take me to the beach. And I fell in love with the beach. It is where I go to relax. It is where I find the most joy and happiness. And because of that, I decided that the happiness that the ocean brings me, I'm sure it brings the same thing to a lot of people. And it means that we need to protect this ocean. Now, coming from Liberia, where majority of the kids don't even have access to education. How can we still integrate ocean literacy into our educational system? Well, I, along with some of my colleagues at Termite Makers Africa, are trying to see how we can integrate ocean literacy into our academic curriculum. But also, we are doing continuous widespread awareness in all of the coastal counties, in all of the coastal cities. We are trying to translate it to local languages so that people who live in those coastal communities can be able to understand what we mean when we try to educate them on ocean literacy. Now, to all of the wonderful teachers, to all of the wonderful students out there, learning ocean literacy in school is a privilege. I consider it as a blessing because I didn't have that opportunity. So even after we leave high school and we go to the professional world, trust me, a lot of people won't give you the time. A lot of people won't want to listen. You might not get the encouragement that your teachers are giving you right now, to the students out there, but you need to continue to build on your passion because the ocean needs us and it needs us urgently. So you need to be firm and you need to be passionate about it. That's how you get people to believe that you are out for business. That's how you get their attention because the ocean needs us. So people who don't live in coastal communities, you are thinking, how can I convince my kids? They don't live in coastal communities. They haven't seen the beauty of the ocean as you have seen it. Please don't give up. Keep teaching them, keep encouraging them, because the day they see the beach, the day they get to see the ocean, it will be totally worth it. Thank you.
Olivia, thank you very, very much for an extremely fantastic and passionate presentation. Thank you so, so much.
You're welcome.
So Ollie, I give you the floor and we'll then open it to a Q&A with everybody in the webinar. Thanks.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And it's great to follow your really passionate presentation, Olivia, because it just shows how this kind of approach can really spark people's interest and spark people's passion in a way that maybe some of the traditional educational approaches just can't. So I just wanted to pick up the really important point from Francesco about project-based learning and just kind of say that I think this is the real future of education, not just around oceans, but more generally as well. So this idea of connecting different subjects, breaking down those traditional barriers, teaching skills as well as knowledge, teamworking, problem solving. We've seen that come through all of the examples we've heard where children are working together in the classroom in a way that's going to really set them up for how they might work in the real world. Showing how pupils can make a difference in the real world. And as we heard in the example from Glasgow, really seeing that kind of passion come alive in people's eyes. And Olivia absolutely kind of shows that in person as well. So I think that approach to project-based learning, rather than the kind of traditional subject-specific chalk and talk way of learning, kind of points the way forward for how a lot of education can move. The idea of having this driving question, this project, and then a real-life end product, whether that's a piece of drama, a piece of art, a piece of poetry, a letter to MPs, something that's making a difference in the real world. I think that can work in terms of the ocean context, both within communities that have that ocean setting, as we've heard. We're doing some work at the moment with a group of schools in coastal locations around the UK, developing a way to connect their curriculum to that coastal setting. And we're looking at that in all kinds of different subjects, whether that's looking at the spread of algae in maths, looking at, obviously, geography is a really good example, and biology, but actually some of the other elements, the creative subjects, design and technology, making products that could help to clean the ocean. It can really inspire any of those subjects and connect to them. And then as we've seen so passionately, particularly from the example in Glasgow, even a little way away from the sea, you can still use that as the context through video, through trips, through the memories of those children, through connecting with schools in other parts of the world. I saw someone in the comments from Leicestershire as well, nice and far away from the sea as I am in Sheffield here, but people still care, it still drives that passion. We heard Greta mentioned earlier, and I think it's really important that we kind of build on that, that kind of inspiration amongst young people. In terms of the kind of move to social action and creating ambassadors and warriors like Olivia who are so passionate about this area, I think it's important to kind of use this as a stepping stone to help children, as we've heard from several of the teachers, see the way in which they can make change in the real world. I saw a really nice example of this in a college in Wales recently, where they specifically train their students in how to develop these kinds of social action projects. And I can say a bit more about that if people are interested. One of the students there happened to come from Greenland, and obviously there's a huge fishing industry there. There are lots of kind of abandoned pieces of fishing net clogging the oceans, and her project is removing those nets from the ocean and then recycling them into recyclable coffee cups, basically, and selling those to raise money to then bring more nets out of the ocean. So there's a beautiful cycle there. So she's still in sixth form. She's 17 years old, but already leading that project back in her hometown. And what better way, more than exams, more than anything else, to show other people that she's serious about the environment and has all the skills she needs for her future life than that. Finally, you asked about kind of COVID and the impact there. And I think actually there's a kind of silver lining here for a lot of this work, because I think in a funny way, as hard as it's been for everyone through this period, it's really started to open people's eyes to different ways of doing things and to the importance of this kind of social action and the kind of values that it brings in terms of empathy and community coherence. So we ran a survey here in the UK through YouGov, one of the polling agencies here. And actually it was overwhelming. So 75% of the parents that were surveyed felt that actually reflecting back on the COVID period, this environmental theme should have a much higher focus in education. And that was echoed by actually over 80% of the teachers who were surveyed. So I think we're at a place where we could have a real change in policy and a real change in impact in education, not just on this environmental theme, although that's crucial and that's what we're talking about today, but actually on the practice of education and using these kinds of themes that really engage young people to change the way that teaching works. It's more fun, it's more engaging, it brings the kids alive, and it creates amazing social entrepreneurs and social action heroes like Olivia. So that's great. Thank you so much for everyone's contributions, and I'll pause there for Q&A.
Ollie, thank you very, very much. I have a question for each one, and I will start with Olivia. And it links a little bit back to what Carrie Sink, one of our participants, was asking at the beginning of the webinar. Now, you said that you did not have a formal, let's say, promotion of the oceans in the school years when you were 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, let's say. Let's assume that you have the power to create a program in Liberia, so in the country where you come from, and you can suggest to the education system, to teachers in Liberia, how to inspire pupils who are not your age, but let's say 7, 8, 9, 10, or whatever age you want. How would you do it? Is there something that you think would really work in the context of Liberia? Because context is very important in this kind of thing.
So, okay, thank you, Francesco. If I had the power to do it, I would definitely recommend to the educational sector, to the educational minister, and all other stakeholders in Liberia, that in order to get our students interested in ocean science, in order to get them to become ocean literate, we should look at more action-filled projects, including it into the curriculum. It shouldn't be the everyday, you go to school as we learn here, and then you go home, study, and come back to write a test. It wouldn't work in Liberia, as I would tell them, if we want our students to be educated about the ocean. So what about a project where students can regularly visit the beaches, especially beaches that are polluted by plastic materials in Liberia? In that way, they really get to see the impact of our actions on the ocean. And then they also get to know that this is really serious and it's something that is happening, instead of keeping them in class like we usually do in Liberia and giving them tests later on. Let's take them to the field, let them see what we are talking about, and let them, though they are small, though they are still little, let them come out with their own solutions. Someone Someone might say, let's conduct a cleanup campaign today. Someone might say, let's write a letter like Caroline students, Caroline students did, so that these students can get involved themselves. That's what I would recommend.
Thank you very much, Anne. From my personal experience, if you do give a kid that age the tools to do it, he or she will do it. And it's amazing to see that. I hope you don't mind that before I go back to Ollie, if I just bring Robin Adams again into the discussion, because I was focusing on this idea of context. And I think one of the points you mentioned, Robin, was the richness of South Africa is also the richness of languages, for example. I think one of the points you were mentioning was that one of your goals is to go beyond just the one or two languages. Can you maybe just very briefly expand on that and how important it is to have that context embedded in learning?
Well, South Africa has a deep history of language inequality from apartheid days. So, and when we started this project, I was speaking to someone who couldn't tell his son about his work because his son doesn't speak English. So I think it's just so important that we try our best to promote equitable language in our projects.
Thank you. And one of the things we have done in Island Explorers is to actually present the materials also in Gaelic for schools in the Western Isles. And I think that was a very important thing that has enriched the program itself. Now, moving back to Ollie, a lot of people in the chat and even in the questions were discussing this idea of indicators, of how do you measure if a project is successful or not? And I was wondering whether in the portfolio of activities that Edge Foundation has been involved, can you share with us maybe one example of a project that was deemed successful and why?
Yeah, great question, Francesco. So I think, well, first of all, the answer is definitely not exam results. So thinking about kind of broader indicators of success, I think there are kind of shorter and longer term ones. There's some really interesting work, and I'll share a link in the chat, going on here in the UK with a tool called Skills Builder, which is a really good way of looking at some of the broader skills that actually are some of the most important that we teach young people, but are sometimes seen as harder to measure. So I'm talking about things like team working, problem solving, that actually these kinds of projects can provide an amazing opportunity. If you think about the kids who wrote to their MP, you know, the amount of communication that went into that. If you think about the artwork on Labrini's wall, you know, the creativity that's gone into that. So I think measuring those skills can be important, and the education system is often guilty of delivering the things that we try and measure. So if we measure better things, we'll probably get those delivered. I think taking kind of a longer term view, one of the things that we like to look at is things like destinations. So helping to see whether these kinds of projects help to get young people into the outcomes that they want, whether that's, you know, going into employment with a charity, whether that is kind of starting their own business, whether that is taking part in volunteering. Now it's harder to measure those because they're longer term and it's harder to kind of keep in touch with those young people. But it is possible to get some indicator of those outcomes. So some of the curriculum projects that we've done, for instance, up in the northeast of England, we've seen as successful both because they've built that short-term set of skills. We've seen, for instance, young people working with a local port where there is a big offshore wind farm to understand what they do and to build their own mini wind generator in the school. And that's helped them to develop those kinds of project skills like team working and problem solving. But then we've seen a few years later, them moving on into further study and also jobs in that local business. And you can see the kind of direct line of sight where their mind has been opened and they've got excited about those opportunities. And that's led to a positive outcome that hopefully will take them through, you know, the next 5-10 years of employment and changing the world as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ollie, for that. I wanted to just briefly raise the COVID reality. And I will partly put away my hat of Strathclyde and put my hat of parent, if you don't mind. And I'm very cautious when I ask this going forward because I have 3 teachers in front of me which have experience, probably in different ways in Hawaii, Greece, and Scotland, this trend, this movement from face-to-face all day to the online learning environment for pupils as young as 5-6 years old. Now, you only mentioned there was a silver lining in realizing that environment is even more important, that environmental education, ocean education is important. Now, while that may be true, one of the things also that the COVID has given to all, both teachers and parents, has been a panoply and a huge amount of options, of learning and teaching options. And the question is about how in your environments, and obviously this question is mainly for Labrini, Caroline, and Robin, and not so much the details of it, but just how you felt as a teacher about the platforms that you have used when you didn't have your pupils in front of you. Because from a parent perspective, on the one hand, it was amazing, but sometimes it was almost too much. We had to open 4 apps, then we had to click 8 links, then we had to go on there and there and there. And I'm not saying it was impossible, but it was quite challenging sometimes. And to finish, one of the things that we have received positive feedback from Island Explorers is that Island Explorers was one resource. With everything in it. It came almost as a box, let's say. And then it was for the teachers and the pupils, as Caroline explained, to really go in whatever direction they wanted. So I just wondered whether Robin, then Labrini, then Caroline can just share very briefly their own experience of being a teacher in a COVID time and this experience of having so many things in front of them, so many options. What was the reaction of the pupils, the feedback, and so forth? I know it's a lot, but if you can just maybe touch to that, because it's very topical, and I'm sure we would all be very interested. So I'll ask Robin Vieira to go first.
Yeah, so in terms of, I think the most important thing for us was to have a single platform that, as you said, there's like 50,000 things that just technology kids can be using, but having a single place that they went every single time. And that streamlined things. It took us, it was a learning curve. I think we could, as a parent, I saw the learning curve that my kids' teachers were going through. I felt the learning curve, how to support my kids. And, you know, we talk about it as distance learning, but I think it's better to reframe it as emergency learning, because I don't think any of us thought that this was like the best we could do. But if this continues, I mean, we're on summer holiday right now. I think it's time for us to take a step back and reframe how we can use the different technology. And it's been a really great time for us also to learn new tech tools. And so I've been excited with my teachers and being able to connect with other classrooms that we haven't been able to connect with before. But it was hard. Does that answer your question, Francisco?
Yes, absolutely. And moving to Labrini, now obviously I don't know the details of the context of your small island in Greece, but one of the challenges with some small islands, even here in Scotland, is that digital connectivity doesn't always work really, really well. I was wondering whether in your environment, in your school environment in a small island in Greece, you faced that challenge when spending these 2 months, because you told us that you're already back in school and the pupils are already back in school in Greece. But in the 2 months that you did not have them, how did that go?
Yes, the truth is that it was challenging for us too. It was very hard because Greek teachers are not very accustomed to e-classes or e-tools. So this was something that we faced for the first time, and we tried to cope with it. Like our Ministry of Education also tried its best. We had connection problems, great connection problems. Kids were not accustomed to that as teachers. The first month was quite difficult, but as time passed by, we came to know new tools, e-tools that we are going to use in the future. So something good came out of it, and we don't know what the future is going to bring. So sometime we are going to use these e-tools again. We hope that this doesn't happen, but we have to be prepared.
Thank you very much. Caroline, what was your experience, and is there anything that you would like to share about that?
Great, thank you. I think I love the way Robin put it. It's emergency learning. That is what's going on in Scotland as well, particularly in our school. You know, we have, I mean, on the days that my colleague is in supporting key worker children, we've got 66 children and you're it. I think, you know, from 2 years ago when we first started the project, and I was so desperate to connect with Robin's pupils, and GDPR was an issue, and trying to find a platform, the platform that Robin was using wasn't signed off by my IT team. And I think now that, you know, we've got 8-year-olds actively and independently working online, that I think, you know, we have a perfect argument. Labrina was talking about positives coming from this, definitely is to find ways and make it work regardless in future, because that was, I think, the main kind of disappointment of the project, was that the children couldn't directly communicate and share all their work. It was kind of, well, what other platform could we use? And I think going forward, you know, definitely, you know, these e-tools, as you say, are here, and we should definitely be making the most of them so that we can connect our young people and they can actually communicate and share examples of their work, share their ideas. You know, Olivia was talking about, you know, actually some of the ideas children don't know about until they've got the inspiration from someone else, and then they think, oh, I could do that and I could change it and do this. So I think, you know, online platforms where we can have children in 3 different countries all communicating is really essential going forwards.
Thank you very much, Caroline. We have just shy of 10 minutes for this last part of the webinar. But I'd like to bring back Ollie and Olivia in the discussion as well here. Monique Lima, one of the participants, has a really interesting question. Is how do you think traditional communities and their knowledge can be embraced and contribute to the promotion of ocean literacy? I would put that even in a wider context, and this is the question I would give both to Olivia and Ollie, but everybody's welcome to answer it. Whenever we speak of COVID, we're speaking of a crisis that is happening now, but we're also thinking of what are we learning from this experience, a bit like what Robin was saying, and also everybody else. How will life/school look after COVID? And I think this is a unique opportunity, be it in ocean governance, in aspects about islands that I work a lot on, or other aspects, to use this period as a reflection to dream a better world afterwards. And obviously, the context of traditional communities and knowledge in all realities that we have seen, but I have had the incredible opportunity to meet Robin in Hawaii a few years ago, and the richness, again, the cultural richness of the Hawaiian culture is just outstanding. And I know for a fact that it's already brought into schools, but again, it would be interesting to see how we can promote that even more in other cultures, in other environments. So starting with Olivia, and again, maybe bringing your context in, your examples from Liberia, how do you think traditional communities and their knowledge in a future school can be embraced and contribute to the promotion of ocean literacy?
Thank you, Francesco, and thanks to the participants who asked that question. So talking about Liberia, well, visiting our coastal counties, let's take, for example, Grand Bassa. In that county, there's this town called Idana. And the first time I visited Idana, I was shocked to learn that they actually don't use plastic materials in Idana. And I walked along the beach and it was sparkling clean. So I was amazed, and I decided to ask, like, how do you guys maintain this? And they said, we have laws, we have rules. You don't throw waste materials on the beaches here. If you do, we fine you. So imagine somewhere as far as Idana in Grand Bassa, they were able to sit as a town and decide to protect their beaches by coming up with those rules, those laws, and imposing fines on people who will try to go against their rules. And since then, I have never stopped thinking about it. And I've always tried to integrate that idea, that knowledge everywhere I go and tell everyone I meet, because there are so many things we can learn from our traditional people, from the indigenous people, because these people actually know how to take care of their natural environment. You know, most of the plastic materials in Liberia, they come from the urban areas. If you visit the beaches found in the urban areas, that's where you will see the pollution. But strangely, when you visit beaches in coastal communities, in rural areas, you find out that those places are sparkling clean. So that is one thing we can learn from them. I mean, we can impose fines.
Olivia, I think we're losing you there, so I'll ask maybe Ollie, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Really fascinating example from Olivia. I think this is a great example of where education doesn't have to be an either or. You don't have to be doing an environmental education lesson or doing, a kind of lesson involving community history. I think this is a great example to bring all of that together. Thinking about kind of two other elements that's kind of important in helping the next generation to be even more kind of culturally aware and just rounded and good people. You know, the idea of kind of connecting to other cultures and the idea of connecting to other generations. And I think both of those are really vital to this particular strand, but also bring a lot of other benefits. Just to give one example from our work in the northeast of England, we grouped a set of young people with a group of elderly people who were experiencing loneliness in the community. And each one found a buddy, and they took a bus trip across the coastal area in that community. And the job of the older person was to share their memories and their kind of oral history with their young person buddy. And the young person buddy got to record that and develop a bit of their life story, and also write a bit about the history of their local area and how it had changed through that older person's eyes. So they were learning about the kind of what they needed for the kind of history curriculum, but they were learning about it through the eyes of understanding the kind of the coast, and also understanding the lived experiences of that older person. So they're going to come out of that not only with the knowledge they need for their exams, which obviously is important, but more importantly with that skill of communication with somebody from a different culture, from a different generation, and the kind of personal attribute of kindness and understanding for somebody who you might not otherwise have come across in your daily life.
Thank you very much, Ollie. I wonder whether Olivia hears us now. If she's still there, I'll be delighted to give her the floor just
yes,
a little bit more to finish what you were saying. If you just want to finish what you were saying before you were blocked.
I'm here, Francesco. Unfortunately, I really don't know where the internet started to trip. So, let me just start. I shouldn't start over, but let me just see if I can connect the dots. So I mentioned Izana, and I mentioned their rules and the fines, and I admire how disciplined they are. I mean, then in order to be able to set such a rule and to keep it, it means that they have a level of discipline that all of us need to adopt. So if we can all try to be as disciplined as them, though we are more educated about the ocean, it will even help us in being disciplined. And then we can try to protect our ocean by not littering, and by reducing our carbon footprint, because this is something that we want to do, and then we'll be able to take responsible actions and make responsible decisions for the
I'm very sorry, Olivia. I think it's breaking again, and the time is almost over. So we have to get to a close. But I would like to say just two things before we finish. One is that I'm very biased because, well, we did organize this, but I have enjoyed it tremendously. I really have enjoyed both parts of the webinar. I'm incredibly inspired. And this is for all the speakers, but also for the participants. The work that Jo and I are leading, but it's obviously a collective effort of all the One Ocean Hub on the school component and the youth component, in a way, is just starting. And we will be, yes, building on the building blocks, if you want, of Island Explorers, but context is very important. So we will better understand the realities, the education realities in South Africa, in Namibia, in Ghana, and in the South Pacific, in Fiji, the Solomon Islands, and in the Caribbean. And we'll be delighted to stay in touch with all the participants, with all the speakers, letting you know not only how the project evolves, but obviously to the extent that it's possible to develop synergies, collaborations. We are working with Caroline, we're working with Robin. We hope to be working with Labrini in a project that we have submitted very recently. And so this is not a goodbye from the webinar, it's arrivederci, as we say in Italian. It's we want to see you again, we want to see you again and work together. Just to finish, a really huge thanks to Robin Vieira, to Labrini, to Caroline, to Robin Adams, to Wally, obviously to Joe. And I leave you with my two friends here who are saying goodbye. As you know, we don't have real schools, meaning we don't have the face-to-face schools. So my kids at home are becoming very creative and they wanted to share this with you. So I leave you with that and I really look forward to being in touch. Bye-bye, everybody.